Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year to you all, if it's not too late to say that. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet Housing Committee. My name is Councillor Julian Tuke, and I'm chair of the committee. This meeting is being streamed live to the Cheltenham Borough Council YouTube channel. If you ask a question at the meeting, you will be deemed to have consented to be filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for broadcasting and/or training purposes. Please note, a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, please make your way to the nearest fire exit. And on to the agenda. First of all, apologies, point one. So we have apologies from Councillor Jan Foster and also from Claire Hughes this evening. Apart from that, I think we're all here. Next point, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any interest to declare? No? Okay. Next point is public and member questions. So a public question and a member question were received and the responses were published this morning. So you should have seen those. The public question was received from a Mr. Cusick. Mr. Cusick, are you happy to take the answers as read? Or would you like to ask any supplementary questions indeed?
I do actually have a supplementary question. So firstly, thank you for your reply on clarifying the situations. But my question is actually in regard, is priority over the reasons given, is there an order for these? The reason being, it's been mentioned in your previous meetings here that, for example, disabled appropriate properties will be stock listed and given to people requiring those amendments and adaptations. And I'm just wondering, is there a reason that a disabled adapted property would go to somebody that's not meeting that requirement? I appreciate the list you gave probably is not a full and final list.
So first of all, I should be really clear. I chair this committee. I don't work for the CBC Housing, so I'm not the kind of biggest expert on this, and the responses should come from them. Should also be really clear, because I know you may have an individual case in mind, that we can't discuss individual cases for obvious privacy reasons, and nor can we can't discuss any individual cases. So it's going to be a generic answer. Would you like to, thank you.
I manage the lettings team, so we work obviously very closely with housing options, obviously with knowledge of which potential customers are on the waiting list. So we, as the answer alludes to, we always advertise properties with any adaptations in there, and priority is given to those that need those adaptations. However, sometimes that isn't always the case. It would depend on the level of adaptations in the property, if some could be left in there or not. So there's no general rule of thumb. We have to use our common sense with it. If the property might be empty for 6 months or a year before it's likely to be met with someone with adaptations, then we wouldn't look to keep that out of our stock for that amount of time. So it really is kind of case by case. Always the case, who's on the waiting list, who's in need of housing.
Did you catch that? Sorry, I just got you.
Yeah, so I didn't.
Are you okay with that response?
Yeah, I suppose I am. It's just obviously in certain circumstances, a property that's been massively adapted for a particular use may not necessarily go to a person requiring that use. Obviously, I appreciate you said you can't do individual circumstances. It just seems rather odd that that property would not go to a person that requires it.
Okay, point understood. Point understood. Thank you. Okay, we also had a question from Councillor Smith. So microphone again. We also had a question from Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith isn't here today, so there will be no supplementary question on that. Next item is the minutes of the last meeting. So the minutes of the meeting from the 26th of November have been circulated with the agenda. I'm not aware of any amendments. Any amendments from anyone? Okay, so no one's saying amendment. So I move that members approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of November 2025. Could we have a show of hands, please, for whoever was here then? Thank you, that's agreed. The next item is a verbal update from our CEO, Mr. Gareth Edmondson, who's our Chief Executive, and he will present to the committee, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got four brief updates today for you all. So firstly, on a staffing front, we're continuing to proceed with key recruitments. So we filled a senior supervisor post internally. The compliance team review was completed and there's 3 new posts advertised, all of which are now undergoing interview process. So again, continue to make some important appointments there. We'll then be reviewing the kind of technical and investment team, which is critical in terms of our kind of planned maintenance programme to continue that kind of recruitment journey. And, you know, I think by the nature of having more people in the chamber this evening is also a testament to some of the key recruitments that we've also been making over the last few months. So I think that we're making good, positive progress in that regard. I'd like to thank colleagues in the finance team that we have just recently published the draft HRA budget, which is now out for consultation with tenants. As you were all aware, you know, tragically we lost our Director of Finance, Section 151 officer, Paul Jones, before Christmas, which has had a huge impact not just on Cheltenham but particularly the finance team. So we were understandably slightly delayed in completing the final bits and pieces with the HRA draft budget, but I'm pleased that we've now completed that and that is out to consultation, and we have a new interim Section 151 officer in post who started with us last week. So that's Adele Taylor. She's got lots of experience from working in different local authorities, including those with HRAs. So I think she brings a lot of experience to the council. So it is reassuring to have her, albeit, you know, in tragic circumstances that the organisation is still recovering from and will take some time to continue that sort of healing process. On to more positive news in terms of some of the activities that I think we often don't shout about enough, and I cannot take any credit for this whatsoever. But Christmas, particularly for a lot of our tenants and residents, is an incredibly challenging time, and our fantastic teams do lots of work to try and make Christmas that little bit easier. So I thought it was just worth just sharing a couple of highlights. I'm sure, Matt, when you're doing your various updates, I'm sure people wouldn't mind if you wanted to extend on any bits of comments. But Christmas hampers. The team delivered 71 hampers to customers, 58 presents to those children who might not have had a present this Christmas. And that is always an incredibly stark reminder, isn't it, about how challenging life is for a lot of our families in Cheltenham. But also great that we have people in the organisation and the community that are thinking about this and looking after them. And it's not just the children, but it's also thinking about the adults as well, who, you know, I can imagine as a dad myself, will be doing everything for their children. So often we think about making sure that they perhaps get a little bit of a treat at Christmas as well, which had a lot of positive feedback. And then the usual initiative that we do around kind of school uniforms. We helped 91 families with, helping with school uniforms. This is the sort of the activity that we do every year, but it's nevertheless always important to talk about it and to highlight the work that goes on with those teams. So that was the kind of little bit of an update from Christmas. I will leave my colleagues to do some of the presentations on the actual papers this evening, but I think, again, you'll be pleased to hear some positive movements since the publication of the reports and a bit of lag time in terms of the reporting of some of the statistics because of the Christmas break. But I think from my position, it highlights that we continue to move in a inherently positive direction in terms of our key indicators around compliance, closing out fire actions, those sorts of things that I know as chair you've always set a very, very clear standard about your expectation of wanting health and safety and compliance to be our first priority. So I'll leave the team to kind of update on those measures. There are a couple of things that are still, I would say, we need to focus on, and there's a couple of figures that we want to see improvement on. But if you look at the general trend lines, we are definitely moving in the right direction, but I'll leave colleagues to kind of update on the specifics when those agenda items come forward. The final thing that I will say is around, I always said I would keep you up to date with the bits around local government reorganisation. So all proposals were submitted at the end of November. There were, now let me get this right, I would say 3 or 4 councils that supported a single unitary. Gloucester City supported a what is called the sort of Greater Gloucester Enlarged Council for Gloucester, and Cheltenham Borough Council supported 2 unitaries on a broad east-west split. Just to update that the government will start their kind of consultation process probably in February and run that for about 6 weeks. So they'll be writing out to various kind of statutory partners to sort of seek their views. And as of, this week, they are saying that they're still on track to kind of make that announcement in the summer about what their decision might be. From a kind of a broad council partnership perspective, I think there's a lot of really positive work going across all authorities about how we're preparing. So from now until July, there's a lot of what I would describe as baselining activity, trying to understand what have we got where that can be done in preparation for the kind of decision. So to give a couple of examples, mapping all of our properties and assets, what state are they in, trying to get a kind of baseline understanding there. We're really lucky in a housing sense that we've got a really strong housing partnership. So they're already doing some really good thinking about how that moved from that partnership setting where there's lots of cross-working to thinking about ourselves in a 1 or a 2 unitary makeup. But I think it's really pleasing that we've got people across Gloucestershire that's already sort of getting into the headspace about how do we do this smoothly, with the sort of first thought being our residents, so that hopefully they don't notice any difference when we make that transfer over to any future authority. So those are the key updates today, but I'll leave colleagues to update on the specifics around some of those shifts in the performance figures that have happened since the publication of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gareth, very much. And just one piece of jargon I think you used, which I'm not sure if you explained. I think you said Section 151 officer. That's a finance director in any other organisation. That's local, very local government. So any elsewhere it would be called a finance director. Any members, do you have any questions? Flo?
It's a sort of question, but actually more a comment. And it's to ask the Chief Executive if he would take the thanks, my thanks and the thanks, I hope, of this committee, back to all those officers who contributed to make Christmas something special for so many families and so many children. And I have to tell you, meeting those children and doing something as simple as giving a selection box to a child who would never have had one otherwise was tremendous. And would you please take our thanks back for that? And can I ask you also to take our thanks back to our tenants, because our tenants were active in that, and our leaseholders. And indeed, one of our tenants has already started collecting Easter eggs for our children to have. So it's absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Dave. It's absolutely brilliant that this can be done and that this council cares about its people. And that makes me enormously proud. So thank you.
Thank you, Flo. Any other questions or comments? No? So, all good. Okay, next item then. So the next item is the Housing Improvement Programme. So the objective of this is to provide the committee with a progress update on the improvement plan developed to resolve areas of non-compliance with the regulator of social housing's consumer standards. I would like to invite Kerry Ann Pitter, project manager, first time. Welcome, Kerry. Who's the project manager, I should say, of the Housing Improvement Programme, to present to the committee. Welcome, Kerry Ann.
Okay, so thank you, Chair. And this report provides a quarterly update on the Housing Improvement Programme, which brings together all activity required to demonstrate compliance with the regulator of social housing on the consumer standards. And this program covers the 4 standards, which is safety and quality, transparency, influence and accountability, neighborhood and community, and tenancy. And I will briefly cover the progress, inspection readiness, and the next steps so far. So since April of 2024, the council has been subject to proactive inspection under the strengthened consumer standard framework. And this program provides assurance to members, tenants, and regulators that we are meeting these standards with the ambition of being well positioned for a strong regulatory outcome. And the overall progress so far, so across all 4 standards, there are 256 improvement actions. As of January, 48% of these actions are complete, 43% are in progress, and 9 are scheduled to begin, but are still within target. This represents a 15% increase in completion since December 2025, which is reflecting a strong uplift in delivery and evidence maturity. The program remains on track, and we're now expecting around 70% compared to the 60% I had estimated first. It will be 70% of the actions to be completed by mid-February. And the progress by standards, the transparency, influence, and accountability is the most advanced work stream at 61% completion, reflecting sustained work on tenant engagement, accessible information, and performance reporting. Neighborhood and community, as of January, is 50% complete, with good momentum around estate inspections, cleaning standards, and following up on actions. Tenancy, as of January, stands at 48%, focused on improvements to adapted homes processes, tenancy support, and outcome based on reporting. Safety and quality is currently at 27%. This is expected at this stage, given the complexity and data-intensive nature of this work stream, and it remains a key focus for the program. For our inspection readiness, we are now moving into our assurance phase of the program. A mock inspection with HQN is scheduled to begin at the end of January, providing independent feedback. They will also give us a grading and a clear areas where we need further improvement. The program board continues to provide strong oversight of the progress, the risk, the evidence quality, and the dependencies. The risk and mitigations, the key is ensuring our evidence is as strong and consistent as activities being delivered. This is being mitigated through consistent evidence standards, workstream evidence logs, and targeted support to close remaining gaps. Data quality remains a dependency with ongoing alignment to the digital roadmap. Next one. And over the next quarter, our focus will be to increase the proportion of actions fully evidenced, prioritizing higher risk areas, maintaining inspection readiness. And my recommendation is for the Cabinet to note the progress and planned areas of focus. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kerry-Ann. That was really clear. Any questions for anyone? No questions at all? My goodness, that's the first. Okay. Well, that's because it was very clear, so well done. So next item is the compliance performance data. So the objective here is to provide the committee with key compliance performance data. I would like to invite Gemma Robury, Head of Regulatory Compliance, to present to the committee, please. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chair. The current compliance report provides details of the compliance position as of the end of December, which I trust you have all read. There have been several changes since the report was written, which I will outline now. Of the 4 gas services that were showing overdue at the end of December, one of these has now been completed. At the time of the report, there were 62 fire risk assessments showing as overdue, although I would like to point out that at the time, that of these 62, 46 had been completed by the contractor, but we were just waiting for the receipt of the paperwork. Now the majority of the reports have been received, our current position today is 3 overdue FRAs. We have now received the water hygiene risk assessment from our contractor, which means that we now have 0 overdue risk assessments in this area. Current fire risk actions, looking at these actions, the seven of the high risk actions that related to the electrical installations have now been completed with guidance from National Grid and our fire risk assessment contractor. This now leaves 2 actions to complete, which are currently being managed. This leaves 22 actions in total still to complete. In relation to our legacy fire actions, I'm pleased to report that the 3 high-risk compartmentation actions have now been completed. In addition to this month's report is the reporting of damp and mould cases. We are working towards creating a snapshot report for the DMC, the same as the compliance report, and the cases are being dealt with at the moment in line with AWAB's law. We don't currently have any emergency hazards reported. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. That was very clear, and I'm grateful. I asked for an update on damp and mould to be mentioned because obviously it's the time of year that damp and mould happens, so it's kind of more important now than it is in the summer. So Flo.
Damp and mould is quite an issue, particularly given the period we've been through with the death of children. Do we know what in these circumstances has caused that? Is it a lack of ventilation? Is it a problem with damp in the property? What are we finding when we do the work?
It can be caused by a number of problems. Condensation, as you mentioned. It can be poor ventilation. It can be to do with the structure of the building as well. So we send out surveyors at the time of when the hazard's reported so that they can survey the building to find out exactly what's causing the issue and the best way to rectify it.
Yeah, I note that no tenants have been decanted, which I think actually says a lot for the work that's being done, the fact they haven't had to move out of their homes. And again, Chair, I think given what's happening elsewhere in the country, that says a heck of a lot for the work that's being done here. So please thank those responsible for that. I think it's a great thing for people to be able to live in the home that they've wanted to live in, not have to move out because there's mould or damp in there. So thank you for that.
I was just wondering how you obtained the numbers in this paper around the damp and mould, and whether that included any cases raised via leaseholders, just within the leaseholder committee. I know of 2 of the 8 members who are currently suffering from damp and mould and are unable to get those rectified.
I don't know the specifics of those cases, but if you provide me with the details, I can certainly look into them for you. The data that we get comes from our internal QL system, and they are logged, and the progress of those jobs are logged as the treatment progresses. As I said, we are looking at providing a more detailed report in the way of a snapshot, the same as the compliance report that we've currently got, so that we can see the trends and the causes as well.
Ian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. At the end of your report, you refer to stock condition and decent homes update. Could I ask, how far are we along with the stock condition surveys now? What percentage are complete and what percentage remain to be carried out?
Hello, good evening. I'm Helen McKeegan, the new Operations Manager for the Technical and Investment team. So we have 1,100 properties that are left to survey. These have all been contacted at least 3 times by the contractor, and for whatever reason we've not been able to gain access into the property. So we're just about to start a new approach with a surveyor visiting on a Saturday, knocking on the door and carding them, trying to gain access into them. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to get into, a good proportion of those. But just to give you an idea, at the end of March 2025, we had 34% of our properties surveyed. And as at today's date, we've got 80%. So we've made really good progress in less than a year to gather our stock information. Okay.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll move on to the next item. So the next item is the KPI data for August to November 2025. Again, a reminder of what this is. So it's to provide the committee with key performance data in relation to voids, arrears, day-to-day repairs, antisocial behaviour and property compliance. I would like to invite Matt Ward, Head of Housing Services, to present to the committee, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You've had the KPI report. I'm happy to take any questions. I think the key one is voids. So I will quite happily give some up-to-date figures where we're at the moment. We've got performances starting to turn. I've got some kind of statistics over the last 3 months because, as you'll know from previous updates that I've done, we've put a lot of blood, sweat and tears in behind the scenes to really start working on the backlog of properties that's built up. So we've appointed properly procured 3 contractors that are dealing with our major voids, and then our internal team is focusing on what we call the minor voids. They're classed as minor, but they are far from minor in terms of the amount of works that kind of need doing to them. But those are the 2 general classifications. So recent months, it's good to see the overarching KPI is your void rent loss. So that has come down to 2.6%. At the end of December, it's 2.71% in November. So that is your overarching key performance indicator. Your average number of time to work on a major void or a minor void will essentially get worse because as we complete the works on the property and let them, that's when the whole time period then hits those key performance indicators. But I've got some up-to-date figures for you because, as I've mentioned previously with voids, we are dealing with a constantly moving target because whilst we let properties, so we deal with major voids, we deal with minor voids, we get them advertised and let, we obviously get new properties each month as well. Quite often that's where, because we're getting rid of a backlog and we're freeing up properties, we are getting transfers, so that's current tenants who are either moving to a bigger home if they've been overcrowded or they might be downsizing. So that movement is great. But that then, although we've made a letting, we've then created another void, such is the kind of nature of the beast. But our hard work has paid off. I've just got some useful stats here. So just to give an example, in year to date, we've actually turned over, so we've done either major or minor void works and let them on 245 properties. So that is a huge number. So that just gives an idea of the kind of productivity and efforts that we're putting into this. So just to give examples, in November, we made 37 lettings, but we only had 25 terminations. So again, that's good performance. In December, despite it being the Christmas period, we made 33 lettings and we only had 23 terminations. So we've seen a real shift, probably since September, in the overall number of lettings really starting to outweigh the terminations. The challenge we've had in the recent months is we've got our biggest new build development in Regency Village, which there have been some delays on. We are getting a handover of those properties. So those are properties that we kind of haven't dealt with before, and they're feeding into the numbers because we're getting an awful lot of transfers from current tenants moving into, it's great, as I said, brilliant to give out new homes, but that is creating more voids than we would have normally seen. So the total number of standard relatable voids that we've got at the moment has dropped, and we are currently, as at last week, we're at 122 properties. The breakdown of those in terms of the classifications, 65 of those are what we call major voids, so they need kitchen, bathroom, plastering, full redecoration, might need new heating systems. Of those 65, 59 of them are with contractors, which is good. So we've got our trusted contractors now that we deal with. So again, we will be getting all those properties back and they will be let. Any new major void that we get in is immediately passed on to a contractor, so nothing is sat still effectively. We've got 43 minor voids that our in-house team is working on or got programmed. And we've got 14 what we call uninspected voids. Those are properties that we've just had recently back in that we're looking to do a void inspection to work out what works need doing. Do they need to go to a contractor or do they need to go in-house? But I think it is worth reflecting on what we've had to deal with today. I mean, hopefully hearing that we've, you know, if you can picture 245 properties that have needed huge amount of work, to have been able to do those from the resources that we have is fantastic, and let them and give out homes. But what we need to do now is a little bit more, now we know there is a shift, is do a bit more careful forecasting. Now we know that we're getting more transfers because of course we're freeing up properties, particularly the ones that are going to come back from contractors are going to probably be our larger types of accommodation. That's going to create movement in our stock. So we're looking at improving our kind of reporting and using our housing management system to start looking at forecasting some of these numbers in. But there's definitely been a shift, as I said, since September, but that has been combated slightly by us having a substantive new build development. There's 70 properties in Regency Village. So that's something obviously we haven't experienced before that we need to just factor into the numbers. Other things to mention as well is we do work very closely with colleagues in other teams, our tenancy management teams, in particular our housing options team. So if we know we've got a emergency housing case, someone on the waiting list, we will look, we're agile enough to be able to look to bring a property forward if that can immediately resolve an emergency housing situation. So that is voids. I think it's worth picking up on the rent collection as well, because obviously the rent collection is bread and butter for us. The rent we collect pays for everything that we do. We're having a really good year ahead to target. It's good to hear Gareth mention that we're not just there to kind of collect the money, we do it in a proactive way. We know that summertime is a difficult period. School uniforms are quite costly these days. Christmas is hard. So that's where, in addition to us contacting customers, we're also providing as much support as we can. You can see the figures from the Benefit and Money Advice Service, how much additional benefits they've generated for our customers as well. So we're approximately £265,000 ahead of target recently, and out of a rent roll of just under 25 million, that's some achievement. So I think those are some of the key highlights, but I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Matt, thank you very much on the update, and I'm really pleased to see the voids have improved significantly, because I just think it's so important. We need the money, we need to reduce cost, and we need to give people housing, you know, so it's all about those things. So it's really good that it's improved. I thought your point about Regency Village was a good one as well, because new buildings not being quite ready is kind of completely different to doing the refurbishment and repairs on old buildings. So just a suggestion, I would show Regency Village separately if it's today next time, so we can understand the difference between, you know, brand spanking new buildings not being quite ready and problems with repairing old buildings.
Yeah, it's more the impact it has on our existing resource in terms of their additional properties that we've got to let, and it's an additional surplus of properties that is creating more transfers. So if we've got, as I said, 70 new properties, 50 of those might be going to current customers. So we've created an additional 50 voids than ordinarily we would have had. But all the allocations are done obviously through the Home Seeker system, so that everything is done fairly. But yeah,
Matt, thank you. That's really good. It gives real clarity. I got just one question about. I think I was looking at antisocial behaviour on there, and I think we had a bit of a jump in November. With that kind of data, you know, it can be because there is more antisocial behaviour. It can be that the level of antisocial behaviour has stayed the same, but more people are reporting it. It can be that the level of antisocial behaviour has stayed the same, but we're recording it better. So my question is, so you always have to question those kind of statistics. Is that jump a real jump because there has been more antisocial behaviour? And if so, any thoughts about that? You're madly looking for November, aren't you now? And if I've got it wrong, I'm going to have egg on my face. But I seem to remember it jumped in November.
You're right, Chair. I was madly looking for November. I haven't managed to find it yet. What I would say is, anecdotally, as team leader, I'm not aware of a significant kind of ASB, different change in ASB reporting during that time. We certainly haven't changed the way we report in November. Okay, but I'm happy to go away and look into that further for you and come back with an update.
Nick, thank you. It's just, obviously, it's so important in terms of lived experience, which is why I was querying it. Flo.
It might just be worth saying that Regency Village is actually Manor Road, Swindon Village, because Regency Village will not be well known by many people as yet. So I think it's just worthwhile saying that. The question I wanted to ask is in relation to the work that needs to be done. I was in a meeting today with councils from around the country who have council housing. We were talking about some issues. And one of those was in relation to skills shortages. Have we found any difficulty bringing people in to do particular works, or have we, with our new contractors, been able to counter that problem, and hence we're doing a good deal better?
Yes, it is a fine balance, but to be fair, even the contractors are struggling with certain trades. I think it's a bit of a national challenge that we've got at the minute. We've got a number of vacancies at the minute. So we've got 4 multi-skilled roles that are out to advert. We've got 2 electricians. So it's part of us. We work very closely with our HR department as well, because it's difficult with the trades as well, because a lot of people might want to work independently or be self-employed. And I don't think we're quite getting the kind of numbers from school leavers and stuff like that. But we've got apprentices on board which are becoming trainees. So it's part of us, yeah, definitely looking at the bigger picture, because we need a sustainable workforce to be able to cope with this demand. So I've been working closely with John recently since the beginning of the year. So I've been assisting with the void side of it, but working together with John to look at the whole kind of responsive repair service moving forward. And that's certainly, yeah, one of the top things on our list is obviously make sure that we're adequately resourced now, that we're doing our best to recruit any vacant posts we have. As I said, we've got a number out to advert now. We'll see how those work and what we get back in. But yeah, it's definitely challenging out there. We're no different to anyone else. We do our best to sell ourselves in terms of, you know, the great working conditions that we have and colleagues and pension schemes, etc. So yeah, we do as much as we can, but definitely a challenge.
Serves me right, we're also working with Glascoll with our apprentices. Might just be worthwhile saying a word about that.
Hi there, it's John Clements. We work closely with that. We've got 2 apprentices at the moment that's finished the main course, but then they've got to build the experience up. They're multi-skilled and they're currently starting to work on their own on smaller jobs. And it's been quite positive the way that we've delivered that. And I want to start looking at bringing more apprentices in, but we've got to make sure we've got the resource to help and support them. We've got 2 electricians that are currently going through, but that's a longer term because they've got to get to a certain level. Currently, they're being trained to do ICRs, which is electrical testing. So I'm quite proud and pleased the way we're going with our apprentices, but we do need, and we do want to expand that because we understand about growing internally our staff, because like Matt said, I've been here since 2023 and I'm constantly trying to go out and get good quality trade people, not just multi-skilled, your plumber, your carpenter, because they need to be at a certain level of experience and quality of work. So it has been challenging. I just hope that in the future, with all the other work that's going to be out around Cheltenham, it doesn't exhaust that to a further extent. So as Matt said, we are advertising at the moment. In fact, I've had the applications through today that I'm vetting. So fingers crossed, touch wood, we are successful. And we do like to employ locally as well.
Thank you. Ian?
Oh, hi. Yes, at our last meeting, I raised the issue of universal credit claimants who, in terms of rent collection, who now they're either migrating from legacy benefits or they're making a new claim, and universal credit pay the money for their rent a month in arrears, which puts them immediately in breach of their tenancy and leaves them in debt from day one. We did suggest that we were going to contact the MP for Cheltenham and the MP for Tewkesbury and try and raise this issue with the Secretary of State. Have we received any reply? Thank you.
So I did write to both MPs. Well, I actually wrote to Max Wilkinson and I copied Cameron Thomas on it because they got, it's more sensible one of them does it than both of them does it. I will chase it tomorrow because I'm seeing him tomorrow. Any other questions? Okay, so next item is item number 9, which is the Housing Health and Safety Rating System and Damp, Mould and Condensation Policy. So the objective for this is to provide the committee with the Housing Health and Safety Rating System Policy and Damp, Mould and Condensation Policy for sign-off and recommendation to Cabinet for approval. I'd like to invite Gemma Rowbury, Head of Regulatory Compliance, to present to the committee again, please.
We have submitted this month our Housing Health and Safety Rating System Policy, or HHSRS, for consideration. This policy outlines the different types of hazards that are reportable under AWAB's law. There are 29 in total, which include excess cold or heat, fire and electrical hazards, hygiene and food safety issues, just to name a couple. It also provides details of how hazards should be reported and dealt with, and includes the specified timeframes for acting upon those types of hazards. The second policy that we have submitted is the damp, mould and condensation policy, and this outlines how we will deal with damp and mould when it is reported by our tenants. It provides details of how damp and mould can occur and our commitment to rectify those issues within the specified timeframes under AWAB's law. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick question, because Lizzie touched on this, and I actually think this is relevant to what Lizzie was talking about and will help with it. You mentioned tenants. It's also leaseholders, I assume, if they have a problem with their property in terms of damp and mould. Is that relevant to that?
Yeah, there will be a section on leaseholders, but it will depend on how the damp and mould has occurred, and whether it's to do, if it's to do with the structure of the building, I believe, then it would be dealt with under the policy.
I read through the policy and I couldn't see any mention to leaseholders, I'm pretty sure. I mean, it was quite long, but there were quite a few gaps that I thought pertained to leaseholders throughout the whole policy. So I thought it should explicitly include a leaseholder section. I couldn't see it. I might have missed it. And also I just had some concerns as well around, you know, sort of the safety communications that were going to be issued. It sort of like has like a sort of like guideline that's included in the pack that would go around just raising awareness about damp, which again is a common trend because quite often it is the building, it's from bricks and or missing insulation, etc. So that can affect leaseholders, and I think they should be included within that. I also felt like there were some gaps in the clarity on responsibility in mixed tenure blocks. So again, I know one of the things that's come up multiple times within the leaseholder forum is one of the leaseholders is currently suffering from some, you know, sort of issues with damp and condensation, but no one can resolve this because the hatch into the loft is in a tenant's property, and this has been going on for years now. Similarly, in my own property, we have had some investigations several years ago, missing, you know, sort of insulation. But again, there's been no resolution to that, despite us offering to pay and fix for it over our own property. So there is a gap there because, you know, it is affecting sort of people who are, you know, outside of that actual point. I also feel like it needs to be a bit more explicit in terms of the recharge policy and how that would work, particularly when structural damp is a cause. And again, perhaps when it's more like generally affecting the building. But those are just my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Gemma, would you like to?
Thank you for bringing those points to me. I'll go away and I'll re-look at the leaseholder and add that in for you.
Thank you, Lizzie. That was really helpful, I think. Ian.
Hi, yes. I think what I'll do, if I may, is can I look at the first policy first and then ask you about the damp and mould one afterwards, if that's okay? So I'm looking at paragraph 6, 29, hazards and vulnerabilities, and I wonder if you could just clarify a couple of things for me. So in group A, number 6, carbon monoxide and combustible products. Under vulnerabilities, it says carbon monoxide 65 years plus. Now, carbon monoxide will kill anybody from 65 seconds old. How are we working out that 65-year-old people plus are more vulnerable to carbon monoxide poisoning? In group B, number 14, noise, responsible team and department is question mark. And I always thought that noise nuisance would come under the antisocial behaviour unit, so I don't quite understand that. Group C, number 17, mystifies me. Personal hygiene, which is now apparently the responsibility of the tenancy management officers. Now, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I know that they're supposed to be multi-skilled, but to be responsible for people's personal hygiene, I'm not quite sure how that works. The other thing as well, Group D, number 21, falling on stairs. Quite agree that over 60s are more vulnerable. Responsible team department repairs. I have seen many cases where post-cleaning, stairs have been left with detergent and slippery substances on them. So should we not be talking to estates as well? Because if they're leaving the stairs slippery from the cleaning materials, that is a slip hazard on the stairs. So if I can ask you to look at those first, and then I've got a couple of things on the damp, mould and condensation as well.
Gemma.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
SRS isn't my speciality, but I will ask some of the team to help me alongside.
Ian, I can answer on the personal hygiene. The personal hygiene is when that is impacting on our property. So if somebody is choosing their personal hygiene, but it's impacting our building, that's when it would sit with the tenancy management team.
Is it worth, so we've got all the individual points, it will be recorded, Rhiannon will pick them up, following up after the meeting, and we'll make sure that at a future meeting, the next meeting, we go through them one by one. Is that okay? To give a kind of proper response to it. Good, thank you.
Okay, so damp, mould and condensation. This has been a concern since the death of that poor little boy in Rochdale. In a previous life, I was CBH board champion for risk, and as such, I spoke a lot to the previous head of the damp, mould and condensation team, Mike. And I've read through the policy. There's a lot of good stuff in here. There were 3 areas of challenge that we identified. The first being non-reporting. So you can't fix a problem if it's not being reported. And there were many reasons for that. People were embarrassed. They were afraid they were going to be blamed or charged, or they'd had a bad experience in the past. Now, a lot of that is in there, and I'm pleased to see we're looking proactively at that. The second one was recurrent cases, and I think we've touched on this, whereby you go in, you fix the damp and mould problem in a property, the spring comes along, the daffodils come up, it's sunshine, and then when the clocks go back and the shadows lengthen and there's dew on the grass, it's back. And so there may well be a deeper, more persistent cause. The third that we identified, which I don't see in this policy, is where we have given advice to tenants about how they can combat the damp and mould in their property, but they simply refuse to do it. They're still complaining, oh, I've got damp and mould, but they are not doing what they've been asked to do. And I noticed in the previous policy, which we've just discussed, if I can go back, section 11, defence. Having CBC have a defence for failure to comply with our IVS law requirements if we can prove that we have used all reasonable endeavours to avoid it, and the tenants effectively are not doing it, they're causing it themselves. So I don't see that in the damp, mould and condensation policy. So where we have done everything we possibly can, and we have given all the advice to prevent that damp and mould coming back, and they are simply not following the advice, and then they're complaining about it, I wonder if we shouldn't include something like that in the damp mould and condensation policy. Thank you.
Gemma, would you like to?
Definitely on the reoccurring cases, yeah, we need to look at that, and I'll take the other points away if that's okay.
Rhiannon, I seek your advice at this point because I think a few comments have been made and a few amendments potentially talked about. So we could, it seems to me, please correct me if I'm wrong, vote on this as version 1 of it with an understanding that there will be a version 2 that will come that we'll then vote on again, or we could decide not to vote on this version and wait till the amendments have been changed. What would be your view on it?
My view would be either you can vote to agree it's subject to those amendments being made. So in effect, outside of the meeting, we're committing to picking up the areas to the satisfaction. So it's kind of approved subject, or you can bring it back with a further draft to.
I think we bring it back with a further draft because I don't think we've really agreed on the actions, the responses to the detail enough to do that. So I think we bring it back if you're all in agreement with that. Good, thank you. Yes.
Yes.
I would agree. I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah, next meeting. Thank you. Okay, so the next item is the e-bike and battery policy. The objective here is to provide the committee with the e-bike and battery policy for sign-off and again recommendation to Cabinet for approval. I would like to invite Justine Skett, our tenancy management team leader, to present to the committee, please.
Thank you, Chair. During the last 2 years, we have had 4 property house fires that have been related to the charging of e-batteries in our properties. These cause stress to our tenants and they also cost a considerable amount of money. Therefore, it is really important that we have a policy that aims to explain to our tenants and our leaseholders key requirements when using these products, along with signposting them to relevant guidance on how to use these items. The policy outlines how we will monitor this policy and what actions will be taken if this policy isn't adhered to. The policy also outlines how tenants and leaseholders can appeal or complain against any actions that are taken against this policy. This policy will be reviewed every 3 years or unless there is a relevant change in legislation. Sorry, can't get that word out. We also plan along the lines of this to do a campaign around charging of e-bikes, e-bike batteries in their properties, which will use our website, social media, tenant voice, and enforce our message to our residents and our leaseholders. Thank you, Chair. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes. Ian.
Yes, this is very important. I think I asked Caroline at our last meeting about this, and it's quite shocking. The difficulty of enforcing this in people's actual properties is a problem. So it's communicating the dangers which people may not be aware of. The only thing I was going to say, the tenant guide, the e-bike and battery safety tenant guide that's at the back, which is just text. I think this is great, but if it's going to impact on tenants, many of whom might not have high level of literacy or may not have English as their first language, it needs to be simple, pictorial, and eye-catching. This is great for us. But I do worry slightly if we have something which is just text on a page, it's not going to reach the people we need to reach.
Thank you, Ian. The campaign that we aim to do will aim at simple, and I'll be working with our comms team to make sure that it's pictorial, that there is enough evidence there, and we are out there. I'm hoping to work, and I've spoken to Nick with our ASB team and also the fire service in doing that campaign.
Ian, do you feel, because this will come to a vote as well, it's due to come to a vote, do you feel reassured on that point?
Yes, I'm perfectly happy with that. I just wanted to make the observation. I think the policy is a very good one. I just wanted to be clear that this is great for us, it's great for Cabinet, but posting that through somebody's door is probably not going to elicit the response that we want.
It's a good point, well made. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so can we, subject to what's been discussed, can we take this to vote? So there are two things we're voting on, that the policy is noted by Cabinet Housing Committee and that the policy is recommended for approval by Cabinet. So that the policy is noted by Cabinet Housing Committee. That has been noted, I'm sure, but we don't really, yeah, we've all noted it, that the policy is recommended for approval by Cabinet. Good, unanimous, thank you. But we do note the points that Ian has made. Good. So next item is item number 11. Yeah, so that's Housing Complaints and Compliments Report. So the objective here is to provide an overview of housing-related complaints and compliments, identifying key areas of dissatisfaction and areas for learning and service improvement. So I would like to invite Olivia Underhill, Customer Services Manager, to present to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You've got the Q3 October to December complaints and compliments report in your pack. There's just a couple of things that I'd like to highlight. The number of days taken to close complaints is reducing. The last quarter it was 12.8, so that is coming down, which is a positive. Excuse me. And we're having really regular, as in weekly meetings with one of our contractors in recognition of the complaints that we're getting in for the kitchens and bathrooms. And those have been really positive, and we're seeing progress with that. They have recently had a restructure, and that is paying dividends already. The only other thing I wanted to update committee on is the Housing Ombudsman Service have asked us that we've still got CBH properties that are in CBH name, and they want us to differentiate between the two now going forward in our complaints. So we resubmitted the self-assessment, which they've approved. Excuse me. For Q3, we had one CBH property complaint. And for our annual report from 24-25, we had 5. So we are going to go back and just amend that to reflect the 5. And going forward, we will be reporting only in a sentence, but we will be reporting separately, which is what they've asked us to do.
Thank you. That has brought up a question for me, which may be a Gareth question, actually. What's the difference between a CBH property and a Cheltenham Borough Council property? And when will all properties be Cheltenham Borough Council properties?
So the original decision that was taken when housing services were brought back in was in effect to wind up Cheltenham Borough Homes as an organisation. Cheltenham Borough Homes has not been wound up as yet because of the fact that there were a number of bits of finance questions that we were engaged with that had sort of tax implications that we didn't want to do anything inadvertent that would then have an impact on the council's finances. CBH as an entity did have ownership of some properties that sat outside of the sort of council stock, and that was part of them being a registered sort of provider. So whilst it is kind of under the control and operation of the council, because CBH as an entity still exists with those properties within that entity, technically that's why the Ombudsman wants us to list them out as being a CBH property.
Thank you, Gareth. Helpful. I think it's really important to say that the buck stops with Cheltenham Borough Council, regardless of whether they're nominally CBH or CBC. It's the same service level agreement, isn't it? The buck stops in the same way, so everyone's very clear on that. Flo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. What is interesting is I attend meetings with the Ombudsman because I'm the member responsible for complaints. And one of the really interesting things about that is how many tenants are being persuaded into taking legal action, no fee if no win, okay? And actually what they're finding is that those cases are not getting any additional money because everything that should go to the tenant goes to the solicitor. And it's causing real concern at that level. And I'm thinking seriously that perhaps one of the things we might wish to look at is how we can advise tenants of the mechanisms that we have that they can take and it won't cost them anything. And if they go through that and if we are at fault, compensation is offered, which is what we're doing now. And I just think it might be really worthwhile doing that and stopping this abuse of tenants, taking them through a legal situation, which they're going to get very little out of at the end of the day, but they might well have several months of disquiet and unease. And I just think that if we can do that, it might be worthwhile.
Flo, I think that's a good point. I mean, obviously tenants have to make their own judgments if they're very unhappy, but people need information, don't they, on what they can achieve using the different mechanisms if they're not happy. So, Olivia.
Yeah, if I can just answer, if we get any disrepair claims in, we do try and put them through the complaints process. So we do try and go down that route initially, but at the end of the day, we can't make that final choice. But that's what we are trying to do. So any disrepair that comes in through the complaint process.
Ian.
Yes, I'd just like to add to that. This has been the case for some time, and it was something that came to us at CBH that I remember, I think Matt and I discussed this at the time, that the tenants were getting letters through saying, is there something wrong with your property? Complain now. And it is all in order to make money for the solicitors, because some kindly person somewhere capped the amount of fees they could charge for PPI claims. So there wasn't any money in that anymore. So they moved on to disrepair claims, and suddenly they found a different ambulance to chase. And so, yes, this is something we do need to be quite robust on. And I think we need to make it clear to tenants, whether you go down the complaints procedure that exists or you go with the solicitor, you will not get any more compensation. And actually, it was compensation that I wanted to ask you about, Olivia. In your report here, I'm not going to go because we talked about the problems with repairs and contractors at length at our last meeting. So for the last, for October, November, December, the total amount of compensation paid for, and most of these, I'm assuming, planned means planned maintenance and repairs. So all of this is to do with repairs and maintenance, is £7,500. Do we have a figure for the year to date?
No, but I can get it for you.
That would be really helpful, because we're looking at somebody's salary here. We're looking at if we can make improvements in this area and, you know, sort out some of the things that are going wrong in this area, we could afford to employ somebody else to do this, just basically not having to pay all this compensation.
I will get you that figure. I think what we're doing with complaints at the moment is, what we don't want to do is, we don't want maladministration from the Housing Ombudsman Service. So we have used past cases as almost like a guideline of where our compensation offer should be. And I think that is making a difference. But unfortunately, we can't control the number of complaints that come in. And, you know, I agree with you, but I will get you that figure for the year to date.
Olivia, thank you. Being the person who deals with complaints must be tough at times, so by definition, so thank you. Really appreciate it. Sure.
It might not be directly for this section. I think it actually might be for you. And earlier in the paper, in the pack, but last meeting, we did touch on the contractor review process and the fact that there were quite a lot of cases where the planned repairs or work being done wasn't meeting a satisfactory standard. And again, there was also some sort of commentary around how it can be difficult sometimes to monitor recalls, particularly in communal areas. I don't know if anything's been picked up since the last meeting around that, and if there's any update at all in terms of that sort of review of contractors and the quality of the service they're providing.
Yeah, I can help with that. So I came into post in November, so as the new operations manager for the planned maintenance team. So that's something that I quickly realised needed to be looked at. So I've been attending all the monthly meetings with the managing directors of the contracts that we have. So to meet, introduce myself and just see how the surveyor is managing that that meeting and if they need any support. So I'm looking at putting in place some admin support for them, so that there's regular minutes taken. We can go back and revisit any actions that were picked up at the last meeting. I think we have had a depleted team, and we're still recruiting to that team now. So if I can get that team bolstered up with support and with my support as well, overview, and someone for them to go to, then I think that's going to make a big difference. So I think you mentioned, your question was about communal areas. What was that in particular? Sorry.
Just because when we were looking last meeting, we looked at the sort of policy for the tenants around, I can't remember exactly what it was called, and part of that, it was looking at when you've got like a repairs process, that there should be some feedback provided to the tenant. So this is just a tenant's policy, noting that the leaseholders would be picked up separately. But there were points around where you've got particularly communal repairs. Well, I don't always think in like a flat, for example, that's very clear who's made that raise that in the first place. And there's certainly absolutely no feedback mechanism at the moment for hearing about whether that's been repaired. And particularly, I think this relates often to gates and doors and sort of safety concerns around that. So the comment around that was just sort of how would that be put into place to ensure that there's still that same feedback loop in terms of timescales and the number of call outs, because anecdotally, I've heard that, doors have been repaired, but yet they clearly haven't because they are not repaired. So again, it was just, these are sort of the things that easily lead to complaints and could be relatively easily nipped in the bud by that feedback loop, and just ensuring that there are those sorts of regular scrutinies in terms of the quality of work being completed.
Yes, I am aware that there's a lot of communal door entry systems that need upgrading. So that includes the actual entry system itself as well as the doors. And at the moment, I don't think we have a door contractor for those communal doors. We need to reappoint one. We can do them ad hoc, but it would be better if we can go out in a planned way and phase them in and do them over the course of a year. So that's one of the things that I'm working with procurement on, looking at the pipeline of future contracts. And I've also, one of the roles is the mechanical and electrical surveyor, who would be helping with those door entry systems and the specification and overseeing the electrical contractor that will roll those out. So it is on my radar. I think in terms of there's other planned programmes of improvements within communal areas. So there'd be the painting and decorating, for example, and if there's any flooring within the blocks, then that should be done on a planned basis. Sort of usually about every 7 years, so that it doesn't get to the point where tenants are complaining or leaseholders complaining, because it's on a regular cycle to be redecorated and improved. So that's, again, looking forward, that's the position I'd like to get to. I didn't come into post quickly enough to make many changes to the budget this year, but I can be looking at that, looking at the stock condition survey data this year, and then seeing where we need to move our budgets for the next cycle, so that we can do some of that. But feedback, I don't know if John can help in terms of, do we survey our residents after we've done some work in the communal areas?
Not so much in the communal areas. We obviously work closely with Ian. We are currently looking at making sure that everything in the blocks, we're putting notice boards that are fire rated, so that we can give all the information we can relevant to the block when it's cleaned, when we do the fire inspections, who's the point of contact. So that may be beneficial for people within that block, so they've got a clear vision of what we're doing and how we're doing. So that's where we want to go forward. We inspect a number of jobs, but again, because we're understaffed and we are getting to that point, you know, everything has a purpose, and we're going to bring that back in and make sure that we are doing that. We do know, as Ellen pointed out, some of our intercom systems are old and falling apart. We can't get the parts for them. So that's something that we'll be looking at as jointly with me and Helen going forward to ensure that they are fit for purpose.
I think the point about the resident satisfaction following the work, I think that's something we can look into, and should be relatively easy to send texts to people.
Yeah.
Do we have texts? Yeah. So we'll look into that. Yeah.
Could I just pick up on that point? Because I think Lizzie's made a really good point. And for me, there's a real difference between internal staff and external contractors. So obviously, if internal staff are doing work and it's not good enough or something, in theory, that should be easier to deal. You would deal that through your own internal management systems and processes and so on. External contractors, clearly there's an issue of the impact on people's quality of life, and they don't want to complain about things which are meant to be fixed. But also there's a value for money thing there, that we really should be getting value for money from our contractors. So I would ask that you look at that, and SLAs and so on. And
Thank you, Chair. So just to try and pull this together, I think there's a couple of areas of work here. I think what you've heard from a kind of what I would call as a operational contract management sense, we are, I think, making good progress about improving the robustness of those kind of relationships in terms of monitoring the delivery of quality in that sense. So with the work and the progress and the review of the technical investment team, we should start to see that kind of progress. But that is something that we can track and kind of look at, which is one part of it. I agree, Chair, that that if it's a direct thing, that is much more within our control. So we can always kind of look at that. The third thing that I would say, and I think it's a broad question mark about how are we communicating about the things that we are doing. And I think that my understanding, when you've got a new regulator looking at councils, the councils or the providers that are getting the higher ratings, and the difference between often your C2 and your C1 is actually in the quality of your continuous feedback loop with your engagement with your tenants. So I think the question mark that we need to take away is, when we're looking at our general engagements and all the great things that we're doing about how we engage, how we get feedback, what are we presenting, what are we updating, that we think about, are there a couple of small quick wins in terms of, if we've done some work or about to do some work, what are we putting up, what are we saying, what are we feeding back, to try and make sure that we're maximising the extent to which our tenants and leaseholders are aware of the activity. So, for example, if we know, because we've got a great planned maintenance schedule in place, and we know that next year a specific block is going to be getting the upgrade, and in 6 months' time we know that there's going to be decoration of this, then we can be out in front and promoting this, so that it is starting that kind of feedback loop. So I think that for me is a key thing about just looking at that.
it is, but that's a comms issue. And I think, sorry, to insist on this, comms is really important, but actually substantive delivery, actually doing what you're meant to do is even more important. So I guess the answer that I ask is with external suppliers that we keep an eye on what they do. There's no nonsense. We're tough with them. You know, we spend a lot of money. We expect a good service, and we don't expect our leaseholders or tenants to have to keep complaining as the job hasn't been done properly. I think we all agree on that. It's just saying that clearly. Ian.
Yes, I wonder sometimes, having supported various tenants right across Cheltenham with issues in this area, and I'm seeing it very much from a tenant point of view, I wonder sometimes whether our teams who are answering the phones and are booking the repairs, whether they actually have the information to communicate to the residents. Are they getting the information they need from the contractors when they're looking at a particular job that's been given to a contractor? When it comes up on their screen, is there any information there for them to actually communicate? And I don't understand that process well enough. And I was speaking to John earlier, I've spoken to Aston earlier today, and they very kindly offered to meet with me and go through some of the ways that this process works from the other side of the coin. And I think that would give me a lot better understanding of how this works, because one of the first things I think is you can't communicate information you don't have. And so let's see, because I think it is a great frustration to members of the team involved in repairs and contractor management that they're not able to do better. And this comes back to me constantly, that they really, really want to do a good job, and they really are committed to doing a good job for the tenant. But sometimes they don't feel they've got the things they need to actually deliver that. So I will hopefully understand that better by the time we next meet.
Could I make a suggestion? Because, I mean, when we get to the end of the agenda, we'll be looking at the forward plan. This is brilliant. Great minds think alike. Helen, I'm very conscious that you only started in November, so you've hardly got your feet under the table and straight away we're going on this. But you can see it's something we all think is important. So perhaps we add it onto the forward plan in a few months' time when you've had a chance to, you know, really get to grips with things. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, anything else on that point? Okay, so that was the housing complaints and compliments report, wasn't it? Which kind of went off on a very specific angle. Next point is antisocial behaviour, which we've already touched on, to provide the committee with an update on the progress of the antisocial behaviour project. I would like to invite Nick Such, Tenancy Services Manager, to present to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this is an update from my previous update this time last year. You will have all seen the paper in the pack, so I'll just touch on 3 points briefly, if I may. Most important point for me was the Housing ASB team update. So in September, I was lucky enough to be able to welcome an additional resource into the team. Even more pleasing was that resource is somebody that we've been able to retain at the end of her apprenticeship with the Solace team. I think we're all agreed that growing our own is very important. That team member's fully embedded in the team, hit the ground running, and think is a real organisational star of the future. Kind of goes hand in hand with freeing up vital hours in the week with having that additional resource, which allows us to work more proactively as a team. Obviously, the patches, we're now, rather than having 3 officer patches, we have 4. So we're able to spend more time doing those key proactive things, working with our partners in the police around ASB hotspots, and more importantly, linking into the consumer standards, being able to do things around tenant voice. So most importantly, drop-ins in our communities, one of which will start tomorrow in St Paul's. Secondly, I think, Chair, you said a few moments ago that communication is key. So really pleased to be able to say we're moving on with the communications plan. In the next issue of Tenant Voice, there will be a focus on noise nuisance, really proactive piece around kind of top tips to prevent it, how to respond to it, what we can do as an organisation, what we can't do. So that's, yeah, really, really pleasing. Hope to follow that up with some social media work as well to make sure that reaches the widest possible audience. Furthermore, as Justine presented earlier around e-bikes, hoping to kind of jump on that bandwagon and do wider comms around e-bike safety, as Justine said, with our colleagues in fire, also our colleagues in the police, because obviously e-bikes are a huge priority for them around their illegal use and their link to criminality in the town. And then finally, just to mention some key enforcement, again, linked into the e-bikes. You'll see it, section 1.19 in the paper. We have done some key enforcement around e-bikes and links to e-bike fires this year, just picking up again on that importance and taking a really no-nonsense approach to ensuring we deal with it robustly and that we've got tenant safety, at the heart of this. Okay. You will see there are some next steps, so I am more than happy to make a return appearance this time next year if you would be interested to comment on those next steps and give another update. But I'll close by saying any questions, welcome.
Nick, thank you. Any questions? Oh, just thank you again. I mean, it's so important in terms of quality of life, antisocial behaviour, and the work that you do is really important. So thank you. The lack of questions is not because anyone thinks it's unimportant, quite the opposite. So thank you. Okay, next item is the updates from the tenant and leaseholder panels. So the objective is to highlight the ongoing activities of the tenant and leaseholder panels and provide an additional opportunity for tenant and leaseholder voices to be heard. Agnieszka, you said you haven't got an update this time, but you've got a meeting on Friday, next Friday. So following that meeting, you'll have an update from the tenant perspective. Lizzie, I know you're doing loads of good work, and I know you're really going to probe in things. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Well, we also actually haven't had a meeting since the last one, so we've got one coming up soon, and I will have a more comprehensive update at the next meeting.
Well, thank you. I like the ambitions that you set for the meeting. I thought they were really good ambitions. Okay, so next item is the review of the Housing Committee Forward Plan. So we've got that item there, haven't we, which is around how are we going to summarise that? It's around supplier management, checking of work, communication about works. So any other things? So you got the forward plan with the agenda. Is it
the policy back that we talked about earlier?
Oh, yes, of course. And the policy will be coming back earlier that we were talking about earlier, where there were very specific points that Lizzie made and so on. And we wanted to do that at the next meeting, didn't we? Okay, so any other comments on the forward plan or any other suggested items? Okay, so items to be referred to Cabinet. So it's just the last one, isn't it? So it's the e-bike and battery policy, just to confirm that. Next item is item 16, which is the briefing note on the housing sector insight to provide the committee with an overview of recent developments in the housing sector and provide opportunities for horizon scanning. The briefing note was circulated with the agenda and is taken as read. No decision is required, but has anyone got any comments on it? No? Great. The date of the next meeting is the Wednesday, the 1st of April at 6 o'clock. Something I meant to mention at the beginning, actually, was Richard Lawler last time asked some questions, and we promised, well, CBC promised to do some actions, and those actions happened. And I actually did take a photo of the actions on my phone. So the point is, it was properly followed up. I can't read it, it's too small, which is really stupid. I need new glasses, but Richard Lawler's actions happened. There was proper follow-up. So just to be clear on that. Okay, I think we're done. So I confirm that the meeting is now closed and that